What's going on, everyone? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. With the NFL draft right around the corner, just wanted to hop on and discuss the top landing spots for NFL running backs. I'm going to do the same thing at wide receiver in a few days, but before we get into it, if you guys could, go down and give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. If you guys have any questions, let me know, and subscribe to the channel. It is the best way to help me out, and it's totally free. With that though, guys, let's hop into it with our first team, and that is the worst team out of these 10, and that is the Cardinals. And well, yes, the Cardinals do have James Conner. The Cardinals are a pretty bad situation. I think long term, it could be a really good situation for a running back to come into. Well, I put the odds at pretty low that they do end up bringing in a running back, especially considering just how many needs they have. If they do bring in a running back, aside from James Conner, this depth chart is pretty much desolate. I mean, they have the 34th pick, which if they do elect to bring in a running back at the 34th pick, you would get somebody like Gibbs, who is a great running back in his own right. Even still, they could land a running back in the 3rd round, the 4th round. Towards the 5th round, I would get a little bit wary of the prospect himself, just because 5th round running backs generally don't tend to pan out. But if they do elect to go for a running back in the 2nd round, I would be absolutely fine with that. We're talking about an offense that did lead James Conner to have 18 total touchdowns 2 years ago, and last year still have a very productive season despite injury, and even Benjamin was able to flourish somewhat under this system. So I do know they bring in a different OC and a different head coach, but at the same time, I do think the Cardinals offense is in need of a running back pretty desperately, other than James Conner. So I do like the Cardinals, my number 10 landing spot. Let's move on to number 9 though, and that is the Buccaneers. I mean, the Buccaneers are another team where their running back situation is really not that good. I mean, I know you do have Rachaad White, but at the same time, Rachaad White, primarily a pass-catching back, not really getting it done on the ground, averaging a mere 3.7 yards per carry in his first season. Not only that, this is a team that lets go of Leonard Fournette and in his stead only bring in Chase Edmonds. They do have Keyshawn Vaughn as well, but none of these guys are going to be vying for the number 1 job here. Rachaad White is really the only major threat. If the Buccaneers do elect to go with somebody in the 1st or 2nd round, I think that running back will take the running back 1 job, considering Rachaad White was a late 3rd round pick. Overall, I think this is a decent landing spot, not something I would be ecstatic about, but it definitely deserves to be on the list. Next up, I do have the Lions, and well, the Lions on the surface is a very, very crowded offense. They do sign David Montgomery to a 3-year, $18 million contract. I think if they are bringing in a running back, it's going to be early on in the draft, considering they do have pick 6, and I believe it's 18. So this is a team that would be spending pretty heavy draft capital on a guy like Bijan Robinson, on a guy like Gibbs. And if that were to happen, I think that automatically means that the running back will be the dominant running back in this offense. I just don't see how, with one of the best O-lines in all of football, with the great system quarterback who supported Todd Gurley to fantastic running back seasons, to a system that gave Jamal Williams 17 total touchdowns last year. I just don't see how this can't be a great landing spot for a running back. Well, they may have to sit and wait and develop for a couple of years. In the short term, it might not be that great of a situation. I think in the long term, the Lions are among the best landing spots for any running back in the NFL. If I were a running back, I would be pretty happy to land on the Lions, especially because it means that later on in your career, you're going to have fresher legs, which is great for the running back position because many running backs are out of the league in 2, 3, 4 years. You want a guy who is going to last for the long haul, and that could be with the Lions. Let's move on, though, to the next team, and that is the Dolphins. And the Dolphins are a little bit of a tricky team, especially considering they don't have a 1st-round pick this year. It would have been the 21st overall pick, which would have been prime Bijan Robinson landing spot. It would have been one of the destinations I was looking forward to the most. Now, they're not in contention to get Bijan Robinson, but at the same time, their running back depth chart is pretty desolate. I mean, we're talking about a team with Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, and Jeff Wilson is one of my most drafted players over on Underdog Fantasy, because I think if they don't elect to draft a running back, Jeff Wilson is going to be the lead dog in this offense. If they do elect to draft a running back, I think that running back, even if they go late, even if they go in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, they could easily take the starting job. I mean, Raheem Mostert, 31 years old, battled injuries his entire career, so the Dolphins do most likely at least need a 2nd option, worst comes to worst. And Jeff Wilson, an undrafted 27-year-old, and 27-year-olds still are good at the NFL level for running backs. That is an age where you start to get scared for running backs. They do have the 51st pick and the 84th pick. Well, I'm not 100% sure they will end up targeting a running back here. If they do, I think it is a great look for the Dolphins, and I think I could even realistically have them higher. My only complaint is the fact that you don't have a 1st-round pick, so they wouldn't be spending a 1st-round pick on a running back, and 54 is decent draft capital for a running back, but it's not spectacular. Moving on, though, we do have the Cowboys next up, and this is a tier up. I think the Cowboys are a great landing spot for any running back. I mean, Tony Pollard is a great running back, and he does scare me short term for the team, but they did elect to use the franchise tag on Tony Pollard, meaning that he could easily be gone after this next season, and they do have a first-round pick. They have been rumored to be targeting Bijan Robinson. Even if they do elect to wait a little bit on running back and go with a third-round guy, they've proven that they can get running backs late, like Tony Pollard, and still get a ton of production at the position. I do really like the Cowboys as a team. I mean, they're a team that's going to be running the ball a ton, especially under Brian Schottenheimer. I think 2 running backs may have relevance in this team as it did last year. The Cowboys are a great landing spot. Probably the landing spot I would feel most comfortable with drafting a running back, although the ceilings are higher for these other spots, like the next team I'm going to talk about, which is the Eagles. And I think the Eagles are a great landing spot for a running back. I mean, first of all, they have the 10th pick and the 30th pick in the draft. If they somehow elect to go Bijan at 10th overall, I think they fly up this list, simply because the draft capital is so high and the room is so low. My only concern is the fact that under this Eagles system, the running back isn't really going to be getting that much receiving work. I mean, we've seen Miles Sanders be a great receiving back, and that was just eliminated this past season, under 100 total receiving yards. It makes sense. You have Jalen Hurts. Instead of checking it down, he's going to run, but I think that does knock the overall ceiling slightly. But either way, this is going to be a team that runs the ball down your throat. And that's great for fantasy football. You have a great offensive line. You have a great coach in Nick Sirianni. You have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith to space the field. I don't really think there's any knock on this situation. I don't really see a world where you're mad at the Eagles going out and getting a great running back. Even if it isn't Bijan, even if it isn't Jahmyr Gibbs, I think they could go out and target somebody later on in the draft, considering their running back one is Rashad Penny. And well, Rashad Penny, a great running back when he does play. He's had durability issues his whole career, so we can't expect him to play a full season. And while Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott look good, if they do elect to bring in a running back, I think that running back will take the RB1 reins. Next up, I have the Bills, and the Bills are a very similar situation to the Eagles, where Josh Allen is not going to be checking it down that much, but other than that, is a phenomenal offense, an offense that's going to be getting to the red zone more often than almost any other offense in the NFL. They have arguably a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, somebody who is a little bit more willing to check it down than Jalen Hurts. I mean, we've seen James Cook get somewhat involved in the offense, and to be honest with you, James Cook does not scare me as much as I think a lot of other people are scared of him, simply because they really did not use him at all in his rookie year. I mean, yes, he showed flashes, but at the same time, it really was never great for James Cook. I think the Bills do fit as my number 4 team, but at the same time, I am a tiny bit concerned because they do need some help at other positions. I mean, their offensive line isn't really that great, so I put the odds that they are drafting a running back at low, but it is certainly possible. Let's move on, though, to the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is the start of my S tier. And well, yes, the last Chiefs running back that was drafted in the first round was a complete bust. Pacheco did look pretty good, and Jerick McKinnon is fine. I think at the end of the day, as being a 7th round pick, being drafted 251st overall is pretty concerning to me from a draft capital perspective in the long term. So I think that's not really going to stop the Chiefs from drafting a running back. I mean, the Chiefs are a phenomenal offense. I mean, you have Patrick Mahomes, a great offensive line led by Creed Humphreys, Orlando Brown unfortunately leaving in free agency, but you also have Travis Kelce, a great tight end to spread the field. I think overall this would be a phenomenal landing spot for any running back, and Pat Mahomes is more willing to check it down than most of these other quarterbacks below him. So I do think this is a great landing spot overall. You can't really go wrong with the Chiefs. My one concern is the Clyde Edwards-Helaire bust pick and the fact that they do kind of like to run a specialized system where Pacheco's primarily the ground and pound guy and Jerick McKinnon's primarily the receiving back. If they do elect to bring in a running back high, I think that will automatically become the bell cow type of running back. But we shall have to see what draft capital they put into the running back. But either way, let's move on to my number 2 team, and that is the Chargers. And well, yes, the Chargers are in a pretty murky situation with Austin Eckler at this current point. They did say to Austin Eckler they potentially were letting him go on a trade, although it did not end up happening. Austin Eckler still is a 28-year-old running back that is old by NFL standards, very old, in fact, by NFL standards. So I think in the long term, this is going to be a great offense for a receiving type running back, as we've seen with Austin Eckler being one of the best receiving backs in the entire NFL year in and year out. I think the perfect landing spot for the Chargers and the team I have at number 1 is Jahmyr Gibbs, simply because the receiving prowess is so high. Justin Herbert, while he can run, he's not a rushing quarterback, so I do think the Chargers do make a lot of sense. They are a team that's pretty desperately in need of a running back, and I think with Rashawn Slater coming back this next season after being out this last season, that the situation only gets better from an offensive line perspective. That's why I do really like the Chargers at 2. I would be ecstatic if a guy like Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs goes there. Either way, let's move on to number 1, and that is the Bengals. I think the Bengals are by far the number 1 roster for running back. I mean, first of all, you have Joe Mixon on pending legal troubles. We're not sure if he's going to be playing with the Bengals, much less playing in the NFL this upcoming season. Other than that, their depth chart consists of Travion Williams, who I do think is a good stash buy, considering he is the second in command at this current moment, and Chris Evans. They have the 28th pick, which they could easily go out and spend on a running back. Well, I don't think Bijan will be there at that current point. Jahmyr Gibbs could easily be, and I think that is the dream destination for a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, for a guy like Zach Charbonnet, especially considering Joe Burrow is not a guy who's going to run the ball. I think overall the Bengals are the best landing spot, the premier landing spot for any running back, especially considering we've seen how much they like to use Joe Mixon as a workhorse running back, despite the fact that Joe Mixon was not that great, not that efficient of a running back this last season. Either way, though, guys, that's going to be it from me. Hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. If you guys have any questions, let me know. And subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on so you don't miss another video. It is the number 1 way to support me. It's totally free, and you could always change your mind later. With that, though, guys, as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.